What video game sequels is better than the first one, and why? Assassin's Creed. Because better voice acting, writing, gameplay, story, everything valuable. Honestly, hard disagree. The second game really limited your freedom in your Parker in a way that tainted the series for years, until Unity took steps to fixing it. The second game may be better in most respects, but it doesn't feel nearly as good to play, and that extrinsic value is too much to give up. Uncharted 2. The first Uncharted was good at the time, but the sequel is one of the greatest games of all time. Batman Arkham City. I personally love the first, because it laid the groundwork for the entire series. It's also really atmospheric, but the controls don't feel as good and the final boss sucks. Arkham City improved on story, the combat system and the final boss is great. It also has open world which is amazing. The original Star Wars Battlefront 2nd. The mechanics, story, gameplay, characters, and world design were a major improvement compared to the first game. And Temuera Morrison for the 501st Journals. I will say, there are some things that I miss in Battlefront 1. Some examples being that heroes were a ton more threatening there, and I do miss being able to get in a Y-wing and bomb the crap out people on the ground, but Battlefront 2 made up for that with so many more things like what you mentioned. While we lost some maps, we gained so many more. The different game types such as hunt and space battles are awesome, and as you mentioned, those 501st Journals are A++. The Sly Cooper games. People forget about this game series. The first one was okay but nothing super special. All the rest are amazing. I just had a pretty intensive sinus surgery on Monday and I've been camping out on my parents' couch while I get my sea legs back. The best part of that is I've had the chance to boot up the old Sly Cooper games and they've been a blast. The first one is so much different from the others, but I'd say they hold their own lovely charm. Titanfall 2. Titanfall 1 didn't have a story, and it made the game automatically better. It's a shooter game. For me, as long as the mechanics are good in a shooter, then I couldn't care less about story. I don't even want to think about how much time I've spent playing Destiny 1 and 2, and I barely know anything at all about the story and lore of the game. Still doesn't stop me from wanting to always go back and shoot more aliens. I'm surprised to have found this on a worst game sequels list, because I thought Castlevania 3 was the best NES Castlevania game. Transforming into the cool pirate guy and finding shortcuts by climbing upside down on the ceiling and under floors. That was really on fleek. I love 3. If I had to pick a Castlevania, though, it'd be SOTN. It was gorgeous, fun, and huge. The upside down castle was a pretty great addition. Really, literally any Castlevania game qualifies, except Judgment or those practically unplayable N64 trash things. I was gonna say Dark Souls 3, but bruh, they all bangers. Yes, even DS2. I think this might belong in unpopular opinion lol. I agree. DS1 has the best world with connectivity and a lack of warping, at least the first half, but 3 is my favorite overall due to the control improvements. It's just so much fun. I can't wait until Elden Ring. I wasn't a fan of Sekiro. I tried but not into the lack of variety. Probably the most dramatic jump in quality is Guitar Freaks, the first guitar-based rhythm game to get wide distribution in the late 90s, about 7 years before Guitar Hero first released. It only had 3 frets and used MIDI samples to play back hit notes which sounded absolutely awful. There were only 12 songs, either quickly recorded in-house or licensed on the cheap from defunct artists. But despite its hilarious crappiness in comparison to the rhythm games that followed, it was a huge success and threw the door wide open to a tremendous deluge of sequels and spin-offs. Most notably, Dramania. Subsequent iterations drastically expanded the song setlist and greatly improved the audio mixing and fidelity. Licensing was still on the cheap side, but was integrating rhythm game staples popularized by Konami's other franchises Beatmania, IIDX, and Dance Dance Revolution, creating an unexpectedly popular music genre specific to these arcade games. Play options were greatly expanded for variable note speeds, difficulty curves, and visual modifiers. The presentation was improved with many custom-made animated music videos to play alongside a number of songs, as well as vastly improved frame rates and audio syncing. Throughout the 2000s, all of Konami's rhythm games were getting significant improvements over each installment. But no jump in quality was greater than the fledgling experiment of Guitar Freaks and its sequel. Fueled by its predecessor's success, Guitar Freaks a pen-second mix released with a setlist 4 times greater and a massive overhaul to its gameplay and interface. Guitar Freaks still exists today, getting updated once every few years. The latest version released in 2019. Now, the more recent releases are nothing nearly as dramatic on the actual gameplay side, just aesthetic tweaks and new songs. But over its 2 decades of evolution, Guitar Freaks, now existing under the Jitadora moniker, has dozens of interchangeable visual modifiers, multiple difficulty levels, cross-play support with other rhythm arcade cabinets like Drumania, and over 500 songs licensed to its soundtrack. I would argue that, unlike other mediums, a great number of video game sequels far surpass their originals. Especially if you count successive releases between generations. Nearly all big franchises have improved from their first outing. Compare Final Fantasy VI to 1, Ocarina of Time to the first Zelda, Symphony of the Night to Og Castlevania. I could go on. But if you want to be more specific and designate direct sequels, in recent memory Mass Effect 2 and Uncharted 2 were huge improvements on their predecessors, each which a game has improved mightily from the one before it as well. Another notable one for me is Resident Evil 4. I hated the tank controls of the first 3, but playing 4 was one of the most memorable action games I've ever played. Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. I think I owned this for PS2, Xbox and PC at the time. I also played it on GamerCube at friends. It basically improves on just about everything the first game had. More characters to play, better combat, gameplay, better bosses and set pieces, just about everything. I also highly prefer the campaign setup. 3 separate paths each following said characters and their story throughout the 3rd movie. Oh, and it added co-op, which works surprisingly well bar some camera jank. Very fun with friends but solo too. Two Towers was also fantastic and a game I loved as a kid. Fuck the Ammonhen level, and holding the gate in Helm's Deep Kid me still has nightmares. I don't know if this counts, but right now I'm in the middle of playing the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and holy fuck, is it insanely good. Like I've seen a ton of remasters and shit, and I'm not going to lie, when I saw it was over 100 GBs download I was like WTF. Anyways, I've been playing it, and I'm amazed at how good it is. Also it's free on PS Plus right now. Highly recommend, 10 out of 10 so far. Mortal Kombat 2nd. MK itself was a game changer because, well, there was fatalities. There was blood. The sequel was absolutely everything that a kid wanted at the time. There were new stages, there were new characters, there were unlockable / secret characters, there were more, better fatalities. It also had obscure stuff such as babalities, friendships, and you could blast them into the spiked pit, lava, poison, whatever it was. The rumored content was wild too. Could you play as Goro? Could you play as Noob Saibot? Could you unlock the dogs / demons with the glowing eyes in Goro's pit? Not to mention, the devs eventually built upon the MK series, its rumors, etc. and made characters unlockable in later games. It was truly a wild time to be alive. Borderlands 2, better story, physics, better guns, more fleshed out characters, 2 extra characters, more DLC, better DLC, funnier quotes, better bosses, dedicated drops, better graphics, and more replayability. Persona 5 Strikers. I do have my gripes with the game, but it is amazing, and a really good continuation of Persona 5, the weakest game of the Social Link trilogy MO. It's honestly shaping up to be my 2nd favorite Persona game, and if you got the time I could not recommend it more. Fallout 2 compared to Fallout 1. The first was good but very bare bones, very limited gameplay systems such as the companions. They were greatly improved in the 2nd game. Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Still the same great platforming, art direction, and music of the first, but the added focus on combat made it more fun with some great boss fights. Plus it had a better ending that actually made me cry. Kinda old, but Fable 2 because it has more fleshed out NPCs also just basically expanded the world without taking anything away from the first game. Katamari Forever and I Love Katamari are better than the original. I'd argue that Kingdom Hearts 2 is more fun to play than KH1, even though it was the start of the insane storylines. The Org 13 was pretty fun until it got ridiculous.